Yo, 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 welcome back to Business Casual. I'm your host, Miles Brown. And today's podcast, we have an incredible guest joining us, Heather Udo, the CEO and founder of Shoppable. With over 15 years of experience in the e-commerce and media industry, Heather is a visionary entrepreneur and the inventor of 4 U.S. patents for universal checkout technology. She has successfully licensed shoppable technology to numerous Fortune 500 companies and has been recognized as one of the 10 most powerful millennials in Manhattan by Gotham Magazine. Under her leadership, Shoppable has received numerous accolades, including a Webby Award honoree for online shopping and recognition as one of the 100 brilliant companies by Entrepreneurial Magazine. Prior to funding Shoppable, Heather was a key player at Infinity Labs, where she helped build the largest collection of online professional communities, leading to a successful acquisition by Monster Worldwide. Heather's extensive background also includes over 6 years in retail with iconic brands like Ralph Lauren and Abercrombie and Fitch. In addition to her entrepreneurial ventures, she has made appearances on Fox Business and has spoken at prestigious conferences and events, sharing her insight on innovation and technology. Join us today as we dive in with Heather Udo. Welcome.
Thank you, Miles. I'm excited to be here.
One of the first things that I love to do is to really dive into the brain of how entrepreneurs start their business. Like where were you at in life where this idea just struck you and you said, there's a problem and there needs to be a fix?
Shoppable was developed out of a personal frustration that I had, and it was kind of a perfect storm of various things that were happening that led up to the creation. And for me, I had just exited. I was on the founding team of another tech company out in the Bay Area called Affinity Labs, as you mentioned. But we had just exited, and I had moved into a one-bedroom apartment. It was in my early 20s. It was my first time living alone. So I was had to furnish the whole apartment, which led to a lot of online shopping as a, busy young millennial at the time. And anyway, in that process, I was jumping from site to site, trying to find inspirational images and, really learn how to furnish a apartment and make it feel like a home. So in doing that, I had repeated experiences, which most people have, where you discover a great product, you want to be able to purchase it, but you can't. So it's a pretty picture on Pinterest. It's a outfit on your favorite magazine's website, something along those lines. And in this case, it was various home decor sites, but I couldn't purchase it. So what I realized, was, or I should say, the problem was that because you couldn't purchase it, it put the onus and the work, if you will, on the shopper to have to go and track down these different products and who has the product. And to me, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. If the shopper's willing to go in their pocket, pull out their credit card, and spend their hard earned money on whatever the product is, the retailer should make it as easy as possible for them to do so. And then from the publishing standpoint on that half of the marketplace, why wouldn't they want, a share of commission from these various partners? So what I realized is, like, this is a great opportunity where everybody could win. And what I wanted to do was solve the technology problem, because that's what the issue was. So I went on to um, create the technology that I wanted to exist as a shopper.
So when you say create the technology, can you explain kind of like how that process begins? Because I'm sure there's tons of like young entrepreneurs, they see a problem and beginning the solution can sometimes seem insurmountable. So could you give us like your actionable steps?
Yeah, so there's a lot, and I will say, for anyone that wants like a real detailed list, I actually have a free checklist on my website, which is heatherudo.com. But what I did was kind of, first, I wanted to validate my idea. because, many people have what we think are great ideas all the time. And
Mhm.
part of my thought was, am I missing something? Like, is this an actual opportunity, or is there a reason this doesn't exist already? So I went to start validating the idea, and there's kind of two parts of the marketplace that I needed to happen in order to validate the idea. So I went about that first and actually set up some introductory meetings with various retailers and brands to try to understand what their needs were and if this would be interesting to them, if they would see it as helpful and innovative. As I went through that validation, I also had to put my thoughts on paper and kind of play out how would the consumer journey, what would it look like essentially? And I'm not an engineer myself, but having worked at a tech company, I I'm fairly technical, and knew how technology worked from a product management standpoint enough that I could kind of put my thoughts down on paper and figure out, okay, here's what the wireframe would look like, and here's how I envision this would come to life once we developed it. And it's good to go through that whole process before you code it all up, whether you're an engineer yourself or you're hiring someone. But I went through that process and created really basically a presentation of what it could look like, and use that for a lot of my meetings to kind of vet the idea before I kept pouring, more money into the development. And then once I felt confident and as much as you can at the early stages in that idea, I continued to work my full-time job, but I hired an outside engineering firm that would essentially create the proof of concept for me and show that it would actually work. And with that, I was able to secure some early retail partnerships that, I will share a secret. So one of the ways to, when you're kind of moving along your journey as an entrepreneur, one of the things that can be really helpful, especially with companies that can be hard to, big companies that can be hard to get to say yes, to sign a big contract, those types of things. So I framed my initial ask of them as a test. That word test removes so much risk and concern, because you're removing the commitment from these retailers. So I framed it as a test, and I asked for, if they would be willing to share their product feeds and things like that for an initial test. And that kind of gave them the freedom to really walk away if they felt any kind of way about it. But it made it much easier to get to a yes from that standpoint. So that's how I initially started with the proof of concept.
I absolutely love that. I'm on the same journey currently. I've secured two US patents as well for a retail men's furnishing item. And just like you said, like just to the younger viewers, it's okay to not be an engineer. It's okay not to
Mhm.
have all of the um, know-how, but being able to seek out and work with good people and not be afraid to approach companies. And I love the tip you gave us, the secret of pose it as a test. Take the fear out of it to where it's a win-win for everybody. That's like an amazing gem, and I thank you for that. One of the things that when I was researching Shoppable that stood out amazingly to me was that it's almost like a Black Mirror episode where we're so far in the future now. It's almost like you're literally watching someone because I saw the shoppable videos and you're like, I like what she has on. I love the chair that this person is sitting in. And it's as close to just clicking a button and having it come right through the screen as as we are at this point.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, we're almost there. So I guess my next question would be, were there any real challenges that you faced that kind of set you back in your seat a little bit?
Oh my gosh. When weren't there challenges, right? There's so many. For sure. I mean, I'll like thinking about the product catalog standpoint. So today we have 500 million product SKUs integrated into Shoppable's catalog. So like the entire product catalog of Best Buy and Walmart, um, and a whole bunch of other retailers. But we continued to break our catalog, our own catalog. We would break it repeatedly because of the size. So when we first started, when we first launched, we probably had maybe 100,000 SKUs or something like that to start with, 100,000 products. And as we got to a million, or maybe it was 10 million, but we started breaking our feed processes and they wouldn't run because we need to run them so frequently to keep the stock and inventory, pricing, all of that stuff updated that we'd keep signing new partnerships with merchants and then integrate them, and then the feed process would break because it was too bulky and um, it wouldn't be able to finish in time before it would need to kick off again. So that was certainly something that we were constantly chasing until we finally were able to solve that with some technical changes to the process, which is great. So I would say that was absolutely one. Um, another, there's so many different examples, but another challenge that we had was shiny object syndrome. So pretty much all entrepreneurs have it. It's just a matter of how do you handle it. But I've certainly been guilty of that over my 13, 14 years. Early, and I think I've mostly solved it now. I think I'm much, much better. But in the earlier days, there's just so much power in what Shoppable can do that we were constantly coming across new things, and we are like, oh, let's do that too. And we'd add additional capabilities, we'd add additional sectors and things like that, and categories. And then we'd spread our resources too thin and we'd realize, okay, we're not doing a great job at any of the things. So we'd end up dropping some of the additional capabilities. So I think that's one that um, everyone can probably learn from. And my advice would be to try to stay focused on your one core product or solution or service, whatever it is, until you at least get to a million in revenue before adding new things to it.
That's so insightful because just like you said, I think many entrepreneurs run into the idea of the shiny object. And like, even with myself, I've added so many features to where we've been in meetings and they're like, we have to pare this back down because
Yes.
we've lost the plot. you know? So no, that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's so true. I was just going to add that that's a really good point that you just made, because you also want to, from a tech, from a technical perspective, and potentially from a service perspective too, you want to take away from your product from time to time too, not just add new features and capabilities. You want to make sure that you're auditing it and saying what is actually needed. What do our customers need today? And those needs might change. And what are they actually using? And how much resources are we putting towards supporting these different products or features? So a lot of people forget to take away and often just add.
Got you. So auditing is key.
And
So with Shoppable, it's like you said, it's like literally reaching through the screen and grabbing your favorite item. What's the future right now that you see for it?
it's hard to avoid the buzzword of the moment, but AI is becoming so prevalent,
Mhm.
and we're starting to see various types of AI companies utilize Shoppable's technology too. So you mentioned like TV, like we have partners um within the TV platform space, different electronics companies, as well as AI vision recognition technologies and different types of publishers, if you will, but TV publishers for content that are starting to use Shoppable's technology. So one of our, but it's still, there's still a lot of ways to, that will expand. Right now, it's not that prevalent because it's so nascent. So that's certainly something that you'll see a lot more in the future. And then, another prediction that I would have is, um, more and more of the brand manufacturers and kind of consumer packaged good companies are, for a while they were moving towards launching their own direct to consumer sites,
Mhm.
versus only selling through a Walmart or Target. But we're starting to see more and more that they are moving away from that because it's cost prohibitive for them to do that. And they don't have the deep venture backing pockets that some of the nap original D2C brands that at first launched online started with. So the competition isn't exactly the same there, and the ROI that they're looking for is different. So anyway, so we're seeing more kind of move to a D2C light model where they can leverage a multi-retailer checkout that can be embedded on their brand site, but everything gets fulfilled through their channel partners instead of having to use an affiliate link that forwards that shopper away and outside of that experience.
I thought that was beautiful when I was doing my research on Shoppable because having a product and wanting to bring it to the market, one of the things that I'm running into issues with is that, let's say you have a new product, the D2C is how you're going to get in the door, but I think it's always the goal to become that consumer packaged goods brand that's like found on retail stores, like it's what you dream about when you think of becoming an entrepreneur and having a product and like people walking in and seeing your item for sale. Is there any, let's say, advantage that you're seeing with direct to consumer versus consumer packaged
Mm,
goods?
That's a good question. It's a very good question. Um, I would say the only advantage is you have a little bit more control. So, because it's your own inventory and you're the one shipping it, like you're touching every single part of the process when you're a true D2C brand, so you have more control. You lose a little bit of that control if you go D2C light. That would be I think the only advantage.
Okay. And I saw where you mentioned how the actual data that's collected is so valuable in
Mhm.
D2C that that was a part of your shoppable mind frame as to how do we get the data into the traditional consumer packaged goods? Like, how do they get that same individualized, who is my customer? Because that's very important on how to market. Could you walk me through that?
Yeah, so it was pretty fascinating to me because a lot of the prior to Shoppable, a lot of the largest advertisers that we all are familiar with didn't, you know, receive the actual data of who was buying their products. So it's crazy to think that these companies were spending, many, many millions of dollars a year in advertising, but not actually knowing who made those purchases. So that's one of the things that Shoppable is able to help them with. And we didn't set out with this thought that we were going to solve this problem for manufacturers and these advertisers, but they actually came to us after hearing what Shoppable was doing, and they said, "Can you power our brand website?" And I was at the time I was speaking on stage at, it was called L2 Digital for I don't know if, um, the listeners will be familiar with it because it was bought by Gardner, but it was Scott Galloway's company. L2, had a conference and I was speaking on stage, and when I got off, this brand came up and asked if they could license it. So that's when the light bulb kind of went off. It was like, "Wait a minute, this is a huge opportunity." And this woman said, "If I can put it on my site, can we get access to the data?" And, of course, my answer is, "Of course." So because Shoppable is the checkout technology, we receive 100% of the consumer order data, and then that means that we can securely provide that information back to the brand. We just strip out, all of the billing information and credit card details, which nobody wants, anyway, but also for PCI compliance reasons.
That brings me to the next question. So I saw when I was doing some research, the PCI is automated with your company. So how other brands would have to go through that complete process,
Mhm.
if you go with Shoppable, it kind of like fast tracks you straight into compliance.
Yeah, it's basically it's because of the way that we handle the payment information. So we have multiple different shoppable solutions that we offer, but we retain control of the payment information, even if our partner is utilizing our headless commerce API, which basically, for anyone non-technical, it basically means that someone can embed they can make their site shoppable with a buy button and a checkout, and they can also control the overall look and feel and make it look however they want it to. But because shoppable is we have this wrapper, if you will, around the payment section, the payment details will never touch our customer servers, which means that they're not responsible for the payment compliance, and it keeps that with shoppable. For anyone who doesn't know, PCI compliance is a, security standard set by the major credit card companies and kind of adopted, globally for companies that deal with credit cards. And it is a, super not fun process to go through to become, PCI compliant and to get that certification. It takes a very long time when you first do it, and yeah, it's expensive and it's not very fun. So most, companies do not want anything to do with it. So we handle it for our customers.
So you've truly made a a brand where when you have a product, you've created the data channel and the interface that actually supercharges any brand that connects with you guys. In the beginning stages, could you see it getting to where you are now, or are you so far, in the future now that that original vision kind of pales in comparison to what you see?
I would say it's fairly similar. I would say the execution is just a little bit different, and I love the Jeff Bezos quote where he says, "Be stubborn on vision, but flexible on the details." And I've had a very clear vision of what, the future of shoppable can be. But when I first started it, including before I even hired the first engineer, I didn't know exactly, from point, A to B, how we were gonna get there. But as long as it was technically possible, I knew we could get there. And, those details on how companies use Shoppable's technology and what their exact needs are have absolutely evolved over the years. So, that part I would say we've been, we've had to be and we have been flexible on.
That's great to hear. I think that puts a lot of my listeners at ease because a lot of the questions we get are, what if I have to change? What if I
Mhm.
have to pivot? And I'm like, that's the name of the entrepreneurial game is when a challenge arises, how do you pivot effectively and keep the plot of where you're trying to go, but also remain flexible, like you said, to, okay,
Yeah.
this new problem has arisen. How do we fix it?
Yeah, and I think, bringing up pivoting, I think it's important for other entrepreneurs to stay flexible about the details of their business because, what I mentioned at the top of the episode, you when you're first starting, you have an idea, but you have to validate it. And, you kind of should assume that part of your idea is probably wrong. There's some assumption that, we've made as an entrepreneur that's probably not exactly right. It might be completely wrong or it might be a little bit wrong, but there's probably something in how you're originally thinking about it that might need to change. So you really want to I think it's just so important to talk to potential partners and potential customers as early as you possibly can, and then to keep listening to them because you want to hear what their needs are. You want to hear what is important to them and then make sure that you're serving what the market needs. And then think about, okay, this is what they're saying they need today, but where do, based on what I'm hearing, where do I think their needs are going to be in a year from now or 5 years from now?
So is that how you beat analysis by paralysis? Where I've talked to tons of young entrepreneurs, and they're so afraid to make that first offer. They're so afraid to, really reach out and be hit with this idea is great, but this part is just, you got to figure something out there.
Yeah, I mean, you have to it's not real if you don't have customers, right? So you have to talk to customers and you have to eventually take the credit card, right? Or the wire or whatever it is. But it should really be a huge part of your process to have those conversations as early as possible, and it will help give you direction. So even in those first if you have people in your network that are potential customers, that's a good starting point. And if you are nervous to have those conversations or you're a little uncomfortable, you're not quite confident about it, you can position it as, you know, hey, I have this idea. I'm still working through the details, but I'd love to get your advice. People love to give advice. So, especially if it's someone you know and is in your network, they'll be flattered. Like we still, when we are planning on launching a new product feature or we're thinking about changing something, I'll reach out to current customers and past customers or potential customers, and we'll ask for their advice. I'll say, "Hey, we're working on a new innovation, and I would love to get your 2 cents on it. And like, given your expertise, would you mind like a quick 10-minute call?" And then I incorporate them and their feedback into the innovation, and and I can make it very again, it's a low time commitment from them because you say 5-10 minutes or something, but it's, from a business perspective, we're not pouring all of like our funds and resources and engineering time into something until we have customer feedback on it. And like, again, is this something that they need? Are we thinking about it in the way that they're thinking about it? Is there part of their process that we're not aware of that would make this whole thing a waste of time? Or, we would need to redevelop it and think about the architecture differently. So, yeah, there are ways to frame the conversation. So to help yourself feel a little bit more comfortable from the get-go, but also to help increase the take rate on people hopping on the call with you and sharing their opinion.
Got you. And I know we have to land the plane. You have another meeting coming, but this has been truly amazing and very insightful in such a short amount of time. So you're a true expert at what you do. The last thing I want to ask, and this is just a personal thing because I love fashion as well. How was your time and how did it help you? Because I see that you worked at Abercrombie and Fitch and with Ralph.
Mhm.
Did that play any type of like psychological role on the journey of Shoppables, being integrated there?
The psychological part of the question I wasn't expecting. Um, I think the psychological part, I would say, yes, in the sense that, um, in general, my experience at the retail part of my experience in the past, I found, I found, you know, the benefit of it was certainly kind of understanding the general public and customer service and a lot of those those pieces of it. Um, and also like how corporate, you learned some about how corporate thinks and about their rollout from various stores. So that was helpful. But I think the psychological piece was that in retail, a lot of these stores, I don't know if it's still the same today, but I started working in retail at 15, and I consistently hit these artificial ceilings based on not my skills and my capabilities, but based on age or education. So when I was in high school, basically grew to doing the work of an assistant store manager, and the store manager put in a request to corporate to promote me to the assistant manager, and she said it was denied because I didn't have my high school diploma yet. But she said, I told them, you're already doing everything but turning the key at the end of the night. And she said that they just have a corporate policy. And the same thing happened to me um, while I was in college, but it was that they had a corporate policy that I had to have a college degree. I'm like, well, once I have my college degree, I'll be working, in a different position. I won't, I wouldn't want to be an assistant store manager at that point in time. So yeah, it was those kind of those ceilings that I wouldn't have expected to hit, but psychologically I'm like, man, I am doing the work but not getting paid for it. So I want all of my hard work to I want to be able to see all of my hard work. With a startup, you see it come to fruition and you're getting the credit for it. And you're not having someone say, like, you're too young, you're too this, you're too that to be able to do it.
I mean, I've been through the same exact thing. I worked at Nordstrom's. That's actually where I got the idea, and I started a bunch of businesses in the same way. That artificial ceiling kind of makes you think outside the box. How do I not end up where someone can kind of hold me down, uh,
Hmm.
tell me I'm too young, tell me, I don't have the right accolades, whatever it may be that's stopping you. Entrepreneurship is that glass window breaker because
Yeah,
it's between you and the field. You know?
right.
So, thank
You
you so much.
clear the path.
Thank you so much, Heather, for coming on. I mean, we would love to have you back again to give more insight. And this has truly been magnificent. Did you want to leave them with your contact information? If where do you want to direct them to?
Yeah, so you can find me at heatherudo.com, my website. I mentioned we do have I put together a free checklist on starting a business. I've got lots of content for people that want to go from being an employee to an entrepreneur. And I'm also on Instagram, which is at Heather Udo 1.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is your host, Miles Brown. Until next time, peace.